Story 1. Cable company kept calling to recharge even after disconnecting service. Booked tech support to fix non-existent TV box. My old TV finally broke down, so I got a new smart TV. Couple weeks later, I realized that no one in the family watches any TV channels. Everyone goes for streaming content. I decided that it's not worth it to pay for the TV connection anymore. Now, my TV connection is added into my phone plan along with my internet as well, so disconnecting it was not straightforward. It was a custom plan with its own dedicated relationship team. It took several calls to the team to find a resolution, which was to convert the TV connection to a prepaid one and then stop recharging. After the conversion was done, I got messages for a few weeks to recharge and then finally a message to return the set-top box. I responded to that, and in a few days, the box was collected from my place. Good riddance. Or so I thought. Next started calls from random call centers for recharging. It felt different from the dedicated relationship team. I Googled and found out that this had become the practice in my country. The company had outsourced this part of the support to a third party, and they simply checked from the printed database about people who had a connection but did not recharge last month. Since my disconnection was in the middle of the month, and their printed database was from the beginning, they did not have this updated info. I tried my best to inform them about this to no avail. I started talking to the callers, informing them of the fake problem my TV was having connecting to the set-top box and that multiple support requests have fallen on deaf ears. Also, started recording the calls. Third caller took it seriously and booked tech support. Got a call from a field tech within hours. He came by. I greeted him with drinks and informed him about the real issue. We had a good laugh. He suggested that I keep it up a few more times for good measure. After 8 tech support visits, finally they got the message. Got a call from a supervisor asking why I was booking tech support when clearly I didn't have a connection anymore. I mailed him the call recordings. He was pretty annoyed, but I stopped getting calls so much. Any call I get now, rarely, like once a couple weeks, I just read from the same script, and if someone takes it seriously enough to try to book tech support, they get a short note against my ID to not bother this gentleman. Wow, what a story. So this creator here had a pretty interesting journey transitioning from old TV to a new smart TV, right? Isn't it funny how quickly technology changes our habits? Just a few years ago, everyone was glued to cable TV, and now it's all about streaming. What's really interesting is how complicated it was to disconnect the TV connection. Makes you wonder, how many of you have had similar experiences trying to cancel a service? It's crazy, right? All those calls to the dedicated relationship team just to find a resolution. And converting it to a prepaid plan first? Sounds like a lot of hoops to jump through. And then, when he thought he was done, the calls from third-party call centers started. What a nightmare. It's fascinating but also a bit frustrating how companies outsource these tasks and there's a lack of updated information. Have any of you dealt with something similar? The way he handled it is really clever though. Booking tech support to get the calls to stop? Genius. And recording everything? Smart move. I love how even the field technician got in on it and suggested continuing the act. After 8 visits, they finally got the message. That's persistence for you. So, what do you guys think? Have you ever had to go to such lengths to stop getting annoying calls? Let me know in the comments below. Story 2. Phone calls for the previous owner who turned out to be my shitty manager. Mobile phones became common in my country around 2004, just as I finished high school. My parents bought me my first phone, a second-hand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised myself that someday I'd buy a new phone with my own money. When college started, I had a 2-hour daily commute. In high school, I had excelled academically and won several district-level awards. These awards were being distributed during my first year of college. One nationalized bank award finally gave me enough money for a new phone. I bought a Sony Ericsson K300i and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the 3rd day, I started receiving calls for a guy named Bitsa from various financial institutions. It turned out the number previously belonged to him, and for 20 years, I've been getting these calls. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device-specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over, keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. He took pride in making our lives a living hell. Bits ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team stepped into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. Bits' presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet was quick to take credit for any successes, no matter how small. Failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours, ensuring no one could escape his grasp. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thinly veiled threat, perfection or dismissal. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. Yet Bits remained oblivious, satisfied only by his complete and total control. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area as I was and had gone to the same school, though years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise, we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That was when I first learned about Bits from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His full name was an eye-opener. It was Bitsa. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I already knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else. I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into the details, but it was evident that Bitsa and Bits were the same person. I'd been quite pissed with this unknown person named Bitsa for almost a decade by then, and Bits had been the bane of my and several others' existence for quite some time. This is where the revenge lies. First, I unblocked all the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls daily on average, but after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying, "wrong number," I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and provided his current number to update their database. This is where I could be the AH. I also volunteered his manager's number in case he tries something else. The fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Banks had sold his debts to companies that harass people for a living to get their money back. It turned out he had been taking loans in everyone's names, his wife, parents, uncles, aunts, and giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards of $200, equivalent in USD, but it's a shitload of money where we are from. Apparently he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him. Probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager started to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later, haven't heard from him since. Hey everyone. Today we've got a really interesting story that feels like a mix of high school drama and corporate karma. So the story kicks off in 2004 when our narrator gets their first mobile phone, a second-hand Nokia. Remember those brick-like Nokias? Classic, right? Eventually they saved up and bought a new Sony Ericsson K300i. Fancy at that time. Little did they know that number was a ticking time bomb, previously belonging to a guy named Bitsa, who had run up quite the debt. Fast forward a few years, and the revenge truly starts. Our narrator gets a job working under a project manager named Bits. This guy sounds like a nightmare, constantly micromanaging and stressing everyone out. Turns out Bits is the same devious Bitsa from the past. Small world, huh? Now, here's where it gets juicy. The narrator decides to unblock all the numbers associated with Bitsa and starts redirecting all these debt collection calls straight to Bits at the office. Imagine the chaos. It seems Bitsa had been evading creditors for years, racking up $200K in debt using multiple identities. Eventually, Bits gets the boot from the company. Talk about poetic justice. What do you guys think? Would you have done the same in the narrator's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. This one really shows that sometimes what goes around truly comes around. Story 3. eBay mishandling stolen equipment, or don't mess with the postal inspectors. I work with a company that times races, running, cycling, triathlon, etc. The owner is a guy named John who works at Race Timing Co., both made-up names. At an race, some equipment was stolen. It's expensive equipment, but extremely specialty. Maybe 200 people in the US use this system. And the components cost about $1,000 each, for a total of about $4,000 in USD. About a month later, the stolen equipment popped up on eBay. John reached out to the seller via eBay and asked that his stolen equipment be returned. The seller was a jerk, as might be expected from someone selling stolen equipment would be. He said, "There's no way you know it's your equipment." The thing is, photo number 3 showed one of the boxes with a printed label on it. Race Timing Co., John owner, John's phone number. It literally had his name on it. So John escalated to eBay to at least prevent his stolen equipment from being sold. eBay totally dropped the ball. They bought the seller's story that he had bought it at a mail auction for lost mail, which made no sense since the seller's info was in the same town where the equipment was stolen. The seller also tried to claim that John had no way of proving that it was his stolen equipment, except, it had his name and phone number on it. John had no evidence that the seller hadn't bought it, had a mail auction, and ruled against John. So John hatched a plan. He did what any rational person would do. He purchased his own stolen equipment back using an employee's name and asked that it be shipped USPS. He was right next to a post office, he said. And that's when the pro-revenge comes into play. It is a felony to knowingly traffic stolen items. So John waited patiently as his equipment was marked shipped and ended up arriving at his coworker's house in another state for good measure. And John called the Postal Inspection Service. He had the seller's full name, address, and proof that he knew it was stolen. He had police reports, pictures of his name on the equipment, matching serial numbers, transcripts of him informing the seller that it was stolen, etc. The USPS inspectors knocked on the guy's door 2 days later and reportedly found numerous stolen items. He was charged with almost a dozen federal felonies, including felony theft, trafficking stolen goods across state lines, and lying to federal agents. And to top it off, John filed a stolen goods complaint with eBay since he now had tons of proof that he had been sold stolen goods. So he got his money back, minus shipping. Hey everyone, today we're looking at a pretty wild story about stolen race timing equipment and some serious pro-revenge action. So let's dive in. Alright, so the main character here is John, who runs a race timing company. They use specialized equipment for events like marathons and triathlons. Unfortunately, some of their gear worth about $4,000 got stolen at a race. Fast forward a month and this stolen stuff pops up on eBay. Here's where it gets interesting. John contacts the eBay seller, who, surprise, surprise, denies everything. The seller even tries to argue that there's no way John can prove it's his. But check this out. One of the photos on the listing literally shows a label with John's name and phone number on it. How much more proof do you need, right? John reached out to eBay for help, but they totally dropped the ball, believing the seller's wacky story about buying it at a mail auction. It didn't make sense since the seller was from the same town the stuff got stolen in. So John decided to play it smart. He bought his own equipment back using an employee's name and had it shipped via USPS. Then, John called the postal inspectors, providing all the evidence he'd gathered. They knocked on the seller's door and found loads of stolen items. The guy got slapped with multiple federal charges. And topping it all off, John got his money back from eBay for the stolen goods complaint. Pretty mind-blowing, right? What do you think about John's pro-revenge? Leave a comment and let me know.